This podcast is not affiliated with any Grand Lodge, and the particular antics and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and should be dismissed immediately.
And welcome back to Studio 357 Masonic Podcast. If you ever lost faith in humanity, it might be because of us.
Well, I haven't been here. That's on you.
We've been lost without you, Eric. Eric is joining us again, by the way.
Hi.
Hi. And Jim?
I'm here. I'm here.
And our producer type guy is hanging out in the peanut gallery tonight. Yeah, that's it. Shout out to our show sponsors: Homer and Handyman Services, the Insurance Center, Corporal Dakin Page Foundation, of course, our Patreon supporters who support us with their money, which is great. Because we recently had to buy a bunch of shelves to put stuff on.
I was wondering about that. There's a lot of shelves.
It's a lot of shelves. We need more. We only have about half of our stuff unpacked.
Okay.
Do you happen to know that show Hoarders? Do they actually give money to be on that show? just asking for a friend.
Yeah.
I'm hoarding Masonic items.
Oh, I didn't say you were the friend, but if you.
Oh. So Jim, what have you been up to the last couple of weeks?
Oh, I've been all over the place. Monday we had kind of a cool event at Nebraska One. We had another movie. We watched The Man Who Would Be King.
Yeah,
which is a Kipling novel that was made into a movie. Sean Connery and Michael Caine.
Never heard of it.
It was really good, and it's got a lot of Masonic symbolism throughout it. So that was a lot of fun. Mainly this week has been the Scottish Rite reunion Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So serving with the KSA, and I was in a couple degrees, and yeah.
I'll be honest, I forgot all about it. So in the last couple of weeks, I've been not remembering that I'm in the Scottish Rite. No, we've been doing a lot of cutting trees down around the acreage here and getting things ready. I switched meds again, so I kind of feel like I've been run over by a truck for the last couple of weeks. A lot of naps. That's good. What about you, Eric?
Masonically, not a lot. Just pretty much my Mondays and Tuesdays, my Rainbow and Mercer. Lot of
Wipe
teaching.
that smile off your face.
It's wonderful. A lot of teaching though. April was really, really busy with, beyond April. I know it's been a while since I've been on the podcast, but by the end of this semester, so after the next 2 weeks, I will have had taught over 2,500 kids this year.
Wow.
And it's not even the busy time. So it's been really busy with teaching, which is why I've been having to say no to a lot of things afterwards, because as teachers know, that is a exhausting job. and
you've started a side hustle? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, I'm working on right now. I've been writing lesson plans for it, but I'm going to start offering kind of drum instruction, but in a more qualitative format, as opposed to like, here's how to hold the sticks, here's how to read, here's how to play 8 on a hand.
Basically, he structured it so he doesn't have to teach me how to play the drums.
Yeah, get away from that. But it's basically looking at playing drums as telling a story, trying to think about it being more, somebody would say, more mindful about how we play and the approaches towards that. So I've got all sorts of things based off of like how a book would be. So I've got like prologues, I've got epilogues, I've got lessons, basics, but then I also have what are called footnotes. So it's like if something comes up, something becomes popular, whatever, like I would create an episode, which would be more kind of podcast format. But with a little bit of playing here and there just to demonstrate based off of what I'm talking about. So like one of the footnotes that I want to do is going to be about how most drummers play with shoes on. And I don't understand that. I played barefoot for probably about 80% of my life.
So you said podcast for the extra. Is this some sort of a format online or something? You
Yeah,
take the
so
classes?
it'll be on YouTube videos, and then I'll create a Patreon with some little extras that if people sign up that way, because all I want to use the money for is to help pay for playing drums. I'm not trying to make money. Drums are expensive.
No, that sounds interesting. You won't have to worry about me. I have no rhythm. So
that last one you released on YouTube with the Avenged Sevenfold cover, that was insane.
Thanks. Thank
I
you.
like it. So this episode, our guest is Raymond Foster, and you are in California. You wrote The Temple Within, which I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I've listened to some other podcasts, and it sounds like a fantastic book.
He's actually got some others. Can
Yeah.
you give us a list of some of the other books you've got?
Well, over my shoulder there, you can see 4 of them behind me. One of them is The Temple Within. The first book I wrote was published by Prentice Hall. It's a textbook called Police Technology. And then there's a leadership book there. And then I took a job. I got this crazy idea that I would write about being an Uber driver. So I did that, and I wrote a book called Chasing the Surge, 10,000 Rides as an Uber Driver, or 10,000 Rides in the American Night. So kind of mostly always I would say textbook type things. And the Chasing the Surge really turns out to be more of an autobiography memoir type book. So yeah, there you go.
You want to take the first one, Jim?
Sure. Well, Raymond, the man is as important as the Mason. So tell us about yourself as a man and let everyone know what brought you to the craft and, more importantly, what keeps you here.
So good 3-part question. I always fall back on the Briggs-Meyer because it's really interesting with me. That's the psychological profile. I score extraordinarily high in 3 areas. One is openness, the other is disagreeableness, and the other is conscientiousness. And the conscientious part probably mitigates the destructive part of being disagreeable. But what that means is I'm really open to new ideas and to new things and new experiences. And that served me very well in life. Then the disagreeable part is that once I decide that I'm going to do something, I go forward and I do it. And it's difficult to change my mind. But it's not impossible because I can really stick to what I feel is my value system. So that makes me really focused and centered. And then conscientious. I mean, I basically, again, I had a tea party with my granddaughter, and she said, she tells all her friends, I'm the Barbie of men, in that I have all the accessories. I've had all the careers. I have been she goes, you're the airline pilot, the police officer, the teacher, the writer. You're the guy that cooks. You're the guy that, she'll tell you, you're just the Ken doll. You're not the Ken, you're the Barbie, because she's got all the good toys. So that's me. Freemasonry. I met my first Freemason when I was 15. He would become my future father-in-law. And we had these long conversations. We started with the book Dianetics, and then we went through Plato and Aristotle, and finally into Carlos Castaneda, these philosophical books. And I knew he was a Mason. I thought Masons were men who sat around and discussed the great ideas of life. And so I spent a life pursuing the great ideas of life, waiting for somebody to ask me to join. And one day, my aunt, who was a worthy matron at an Eastern Star, and my uncle was a Hiram Award-winning Master Mason, my cousins were Master Masons, my aunt says, have you ever thought about becoming a Mason? I go, yeah, I'd like to be a Mason. She goes, well, the boys can't ask you, but I can. You want me to get you an application? And the next thing I know, I'm initiated, passed, and raised in Mariposa number 24. What keeps me coming back is, obviously, I wanted to get in for a very long time. And I spent a lot of time exploring the craft philosophically in teaching. And, I worked through the chairs and become master of the lodge and did all those traditional things. What keeps me coming back is that especially in the second degree, during the staircase lecture, which maybe this is why it's behind you, a man named Dick Bondi, a World War II fighter pilot, gave me that lecture. And I didn't know he'd memorized it. I thought he was just talking to me. That's how well he did that. And that had a profound impact on me. And I drive to Lodge to Mariposa. I go up every month for state of meeting. I go up for degrees. That's 300 miles one way every month. And I can't repay the debt that they gave me, for what they gave me in that lodge. And so that's, I guess, what keeps me engaged in Freemasonry. Is it's something I was searching for, I found, I explored, and I continue to explore.
All right. We already went through number 2 with that. So without giving away too much, walk us through some of your last book, your latest one, and why is such a passion for you?
Well, okay. So I was master about 10 years ago. And after becoming master, and I didn't go through the chairs, by the way, I had no interest in becoming master of the lodge. What I did was, we have rehearsal every Monday night. I just showed up every Monday night because I wanted to learn the ritual. And what I wanted to do is I felt that I will tell you, I write about this. The only way that you can truly inculcate Freemasonry is by participating. And the only way you can participate fully is by initiating other brothers. And so that means you have to go through the line. That is an educational process for you as a man, a building block. And so I participated that way, and I would fill in on every part. And one day, the guy who was supposed to go forward from senior deacon to junior warden was unable to do so, and I just jumped in the line and went forward from there. For the purpose only, I wasn't interested in being master. I did not interest me. I wanted to give the lecture of the third degree. I wanted to obligate men. I wanted to do those things to participate in the process. So after that, I decided I was going to do Masonic education because we weren't doing it, and I felt it was important. And I had my first Masonic education night, and it was awful. It was absolutely awful. In that I started way too. I had taught once a course, Introduction to Philosophy at Fresno State University, so I have an interest in this, a deep interest in it. And I started too high in too deep into the weeds on Freemasonry, and I got polite golf claps. Nobody would tell me that it was awful. So I went back and I said, what's my mistake? My mistake is I've got to ground this where men live, and most of the men here are Christians. They have a good Christian background. A large percentage of our ritual comes from the King James Version of the Bible. Let's explore those things first, and then craft lessons around those. And that became very successful. And then I was invited to do a graduate seminar style 1-year thing at another lodge. And essentially we explored all 3 degrees. The men would come in and I would ask a question, give about a 10-minute thing. And then the 20 or 30 of us would talk about it in a graduate seminar type situation where they were really teaching me. So Masonic education and this seminar led to me producing outlines. Outlines led to me writing essays. And one day I had this whole book and I'm looking at it. I'm going, I got to put this together. And so I began to structure the temple within. And what it is, and I was very pleased. I went up to a lodge called Hornitos, which is the smallest physically operating lodge in California. It's up in Gold Country. They've been in that building since 1860 or something like that. And they're reading their minutes. They asked me because we're going to do a degree, but they got stated meeting, installation, and a degree all on the same day. It's one of those lodges, right? And the master says, "Oh, we need a chaplain. Would you sit in?" Sure, I will. And so they read their minutes, and 2 things came out of their minutes. The first is they talked about reading minutes from 100 years ago. So every time they read minutes, they would also read minutes from 100 years ago to see what the men were doing then.
That's really cool.
Then yeah, it is. And then he said, then they also said the master read chapter such and such of the temple within. And so exactly the way the book is structured, he read from Masonic education that short essay to the lodge, and then each essay follows with 3 really questions to reflect upon. And the idea is not to tell you what Masonry means or means to you, but to give you an opportunity to discover what Masonry means for yourself and how Masonry impacts you. And so they're called questions for reflection. So I set the stage with an essay. And it may be technical, teaching you what does the word obligation mean? What are the secret arts, parts, and points? What are those things? Why do we go to the Book of Ruth? What's that all about? And then I tailor it to place to ask you questions, the hope to get you reflect upon Masonry and your place within it. That's the book.
All right. Eric?
Can I go off script a little bit on this one?
Absolutely.
Cool. So I read a little bit, kind of a synopsis about the book and whatnot. Do I have it right that you kind of took some of the historical aspects of Masonry to utilize them as tools for guys to grow from that, from that perspective? Is that fairly accurate about the book?
Well, certainly, if the history of something was important to give you a better background to reflect upon a working tool. Let's give you an example. We use the word the plumb as a working tool. Just if I tell you, okay, well, let's go back and look in the book of Isaiah or the book of Amos, where God sends a plumb line to judge the ancient Israelites. And why does he do that? So that's a historical document of its own right. It's a history of that tribe at the very least. And so now we can bring that plumb line forward in history and say, how are you using it? You know, they saw it as a divine instrument because it was kind of magic, right? They didn't know what gravity was. They just knew if you hung a thing, it's always going to be straight. That's another kind of way you can look through things and say, gosh, I know that's what magic is, right? I know this works. I just don't understand exactly why. So yeah, history was important to bring out. Drilling down on a word often generates enough thought so that you have a greater understanding of what you're doing.
Sure.
Yes.
I can appreciate that. Soren Kierkegaard had said that like life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward. And I appreciate, because a lot of times, I don't know, I think a lot of Masons can probably relate that when there's education and history gets involved, it can be very dry. And so I appreciate the use of finding that history can still help teach us things as opposed to just being something to know about. It's like there's something that we can do with it practically.
So when I go up to Modesto for my little thing, what I do is when I go to a lodge, I give this like 15-minute presentation. And what I will do is I will first tell you something very technical about Masonry that you don't know, right? And then I'm going to tell you something really technical about the California Masonic Constitution that you don't know. Then I'm going to tell you something symbolic about that you probably aren't seeing yet. And then I'm going to tell you a story about a famous Mason that caps it all together. And I'm going to tell you a story. I'm not going to read to you a Wikipedia page or a history thing on a famous Mason. You know, when I tell you the story of the Mason whose aircraft carrier is on fire during a typhoon and what happens to that Master Mason in life, it's an amazing story. And it brings out all kinds of things about what we hope Freemasonry is.
So it says here that are you currently in law enforcement?
I retired from the Los Angeles Police Department as a lieutenant 22 years ago, February.
Oh, okay. So my brother is a police officer here in Omaha. Well, over there in Omaha. We're in Blair, so over there in Omaha. But actually, a member of our lodge, my home lodge, John J. Mercer Lodge, is actually a lieutenant in the police department as well. So being a Mason and being in law enforcement. Now, my brother's not a Mason, but the guy from my lodge, obviously, we've talked with him about kind of like what's the dynamic there? What does it feel? What's it like to be in kind of both of those things? So did you find any like crossover in the day-to-day operations between like being in law enforcement, but then also being in Masonry?
Well, yesterday we have a kiosk at the local grocery store where you can get your car registration, right? You scan the document in and you pay for it. And it's right next to another thing that sells Pokemon cards, whatever those things are. And there's these three guys standing there and they're waiting for the next Pokemon card, I guess, to come up. And I'm trying to get my registration. And the one guy's saying, yeah, I got to get a job. I thought about being a cop, but I hate cops and da-da-da. And he's really doing this anti-law enforcement rag. And I walk out, I tell my wife, I go, hey, this is what he said. And I said, that's really good news to me. She goes, why is that? I go, well, it's taken 20 years, but apparently I don't look like a police officer anymore. So the problem is that you get pigeonholed, you know, oh, you're a cop. So, well, there are some similarities organizationally. And I think those are kind of sad because one of the things that I fight against is, when we have stated meeting on Monday night and I do the dishes. So I'll actually set up the dining room at 8:30 in the morning with a couple of other brothers, and I'll do the dishes, and then I'll give the fraternal ambassador report and probably Masonic education in lodge. But I wear the apron that I was raised in. I wear it everywhere. I have a past master's apron that I will put on. If you ask me to be on your installing team, I might put that on for you if you requested it because it looks fancier and I'm installing you. But I live in that apron because that apron, they told me that was the greatest honor they were ever going to give me. And so anything else is bullshit. And so I think the things that we lie to ourselves about this whole equality thing that, on the level a little bit, because we have this huge hierarchy in masonry of who's a past master and who's a very worshipful, right worshipful, most worshipful, super worshipful. I tell guys, there's this great scene in the HBO series John Adams, and he's getting into a wagon with a bunch of people coming out of the White House, and he's just leaving office. And somebody says, "Oh, Mr. President." He goes, "No, I left that title in there." And I feel that I left that worshipful thing in the East, man. That's where it belongs. And so in that respect, law enforcement, I think I wouldn't give up that. I'd go back and do it in a heartbeat. It taught me quite a bit, but I think that being pigeonholed as, oh, you're a cop. People think you're narrow-minded. They think you're rigid. They think this. I think that's been a detriment. I've written 9 books. I got 5 children. I'm the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, the president of the Rotary Foundation. I've been a scoutmaster. I'm an accomplished musician. I mean, I got lots of layers to me that cop is down at the bottom. That's what I did for a career.
Well, it sounds almost like it was probably a good thing those young men didn't look into law enforcement. If they can't find a Pokemon, they sure wouldn't be able to find a criminal.
Demonstrate that love never ends through the commitment to support past and present service members, the communities that surround them, and the loved ones of those whom we will never forget. Visit deganpage.org for more information. At Homeward Handyman Services, we pride ourselves on being honest and giving every job the attention it deserves. Owned and operated by a master mason with 2 decades of expertise in home repair. We are bonded and insured, and we carry the highest standards when it comes to taking care of your home. Whether you need a faucet changed or a light remodel, we can take care of your home improvement needs. Call Michael at 402-915-0824 today for a free estimate.
When it comes to something as important as insurance, it's imperative that you work with an agency who has an in-depth knowledge of multiple insurance products, companies, and guidelines, not just one. We are completely independent agents, and we work for your best interests. We are Mason-friendly. We have locations in Fremont and Elkhorn. We provide policies for virtually all of your personal and commercial needs, including health and dental. Visit our website at www.theinsurancecenterinc.com. We're available Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
And, I just laughed because he said, and he didn't want to go in the military either because some other, and I'm like, you know what? You're an idiot. Thank God you're not doing either.
Right.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a spin on that. You talked about all of the different kind of careers you've had. Your granddaughter pointed out that you had all the different parts. If we said that you said you were in the airline industry, you were a teacher, you were a police officer. If we consider those each one of your tools, as we have in Masonry, we've got all the different working tools. Which one of those tools, which one of those professions, helps you best in your Masonic journey?
Would be cop, and not for the reason you think. One of the things that made me good, I was working at a car in Southwest LA, which is down near USC, so that's the south end of Los Angeles. And it was during the cocaine wars. There was a homicide every night. So I read the book The Blue Night by Bumper Morgan and walking a foot beat. So I decided I want to try that. So I got a transfer to Central Division. I walked a foot beat. And one thing I can tell you about being a police officer, the most important thing is to learn to communicate with everybody, from the down dope fiend on the corner to the CEO of a corporation, and to be able to listen to everyone. And I don't listen with my ears. I listen, you have tasting, smelling, feeling, seeing, and hearing there. Most people don't use any of those. They say they're listening. But if I'm listening to you, I'm also smelling at the same time. I can smell your body, your aftershave. I can smell if you're perspiring a lot because you're nervous. Have you been drinking? What did you just last eat? Do you have periodontal disease? All these things I can get just from smelling, right? And then what am I seeing? How are you acting, right? What are your tells? And then I'm looking, and I'm hearing. When I mean hearing, I mean I'm listening. I try very hard not to formulate responses until you stop speaking. So I think COP gave me that ability, and that's been crucial to understanding Freemasonry. And that's not one of the tools we talk about, but that's one of the tools that I see.
I'm going to geek out for a minute. Did you say you were a pilot?
I did solo. I did 22 hours, and then I ran out of money.
That happens.
Yeah, we member of my lodge. He was working on his pilot's license before he ended up moving to Arizona to continue to do it. Well, first he moved to Arizona mostly because he just couldn't handle he hated the winter. Even though he grew up here, he hated it so much he wanted to go to Arizona. But he was going through all that. But no, I love the aviation stuff. So, but no, that's neat. I can relate to the like having tried a bunch of different jobs before. I mean, I was never a pilot or a police officer, but I definitely tried to figure out what I wanted to do throughout life.
I tell people I've retired 3 times, and I actually went back to school 2 years ago to the community college to work on a 4th career for my 7th decade. So I'm kind of looking ahead to, what's next year going to be like.
Right.
So Raymond, if somebody just walking down the street approaches you and they say they see a Masonic ring or a sticker on your car or something, and they ask you about Freemasonry, what do you tell them about Masonry?
Well, it depends on the individual. Sometimes very little, sometimes quite a bit. I would ask them questions about why they were interested. I think starting off, that's normally why are you interested in, where'd you learn that was a Masonic ring? What does that mean to you? Oh, my grandfather was one. Oh, what was he like? And what are you looking for? And so those conversations are that direction, right? If we had a guy who came to the lodge and he said that he wanted to be a master, he wanted to be a Mason. He came and he put in an application. So I took him outside and outside the lodge, and I said, "I see your application you put in." I said, I'm concerned about your application because you're also running for school board right now. And so on the face of it, the timing looks like, boy, man running for school board wants to join this organization in the heart of the community, and that makes me a little suspicious. You're going to have to work past that for me. So I think my thing about when I meet men is I ask them questions, get to know them, and then I can maybe help them draw some conclusions about what Freemasonry. I think the point of Freemasonry is to help you become the best version of yourself. And that's to become the best version of yourself. The whole thing, we make good men better men, that's like ridiculous to me because that's not a goal. I don't even know what better means. I mean, but if I tell you that we have a program, we have a moral science that can help you become the best version of yourself. And the version of yourself at 80 is different than the version of yourself at 20, but there's a best version of that man. Right. And that's what all of those first 3 steps that you have behind you, that's one of the hidden lessons of that. They'll tell you that, it represents a young man in his middle age, man in his old age. And then they'll tell you, you're going to look back on your golden years or some crap like that. And you're like, when does that happen? When do I get to do that? That doesn't happen. Right. But if you look at it, that you're the man in the middle step, and you can look back at the man you were yesterday and remember tomorrow when you wake up, your stomach lining will have completely changed. It'll be new cells. In 7 years, you're practically a brand new person at the cellular level. You are changing every day. If you look back and you say, well, am I better than I was yesterday? Then the goal is I'm competing with myself. I'm evaluating who I was and who I am. And then you look forward to the next step. What do I want to do today to invest in the man I want to be tomorrow? And Homer Simpson said this best to Marge. Marge caught him drinking vodka and mayonnaise. And she said, "That's going to make you hungover." And he said, "That's tomorrow. That's tomorrow's Homer's problem." Right? And we do a lot of that, right? But the whole thing about sacrifice and delayed gratification is looking at who I am right now. What can I front end load to who I am tomorrow to create the best version of myself in that very moment? Now, this brings in a lot of philosophical threads, which is, if you look at the book too, and you talked about history, people, because I do a whole lecture on the history of Freemasonry. The history of Freemasonry, guys will tell you that it went back to Solomon's temple and all that stuff. They'll tell you the mythology part. They're kind of right and they're kind of wrong, because the history of operative masonry, if you trace the history of architecture, is very, very deep. I mean, you can look at the time of King Solomon's temple, about 200 years after its construction, the Phoenicians are still running around the Mediterranean, and there's this new city-state that forms called Rome, and Rome will have these 6 kings or 7 kings, and one of them, I think the third one, they found a mosaic, and they form a thing called the colleges, or the collegia, and one of them is the Collegia Faborum, which is the architects or builders. And you can trace this all the way. This history of Freemasonry is this huge tree with this deep, deep roots. The history of operative masonry. At some point in the 18th century, all of the vines of philosophy begin to wind themselves around the Masonic tree. They attach themselves. If you pick a vine right now, you're going to find Aristotle and Socrates. You're going to find Christ. You're going to find the Old Testament. You're going to find Buddha. You're going to find all the threads that have wound themselves. And in our age, the tree and the vines have become, you've seen trees like this, it's become indistinguishable. But if you pick the threads, you're still picking the thread of that philosophy, right? You're still getting that thread. But the tree operative masonry is the thing that's holding it up. So there are two ways of exploring it historically, and that's one of the things. I pull a thread and see what happens.
No, that's good. I like that. You were talking, like you hit on something that bothers me quite a bit in masonry in general, about there's not necessarily a belief, but I think sometimes in practice, and this is going to be a bit ironic when I complete this, but that like once you become a master mason, that it's like, well, I did it. Like I'm the thing now. Like, and that it's like, if you just participate, you just go to lodge, that all of a sudden that makes you better. But you're talking about how like, you have to consistently continue to do this work because you're going to be different as time goes on. Do you think that is something do you see that as being a problem in masonry in general, where guys will join and they kind of think that just by virtue of being a mason that all of a sudden they are Masonic?
So let me set this up and ask you a question.
Okay.
In the Middle Ages, when a man was a journeyman, fellow craft mason, or fellow of the craft, and he wanted to become a master mason, what he did was he produced his master's piece. Right? That's where the word masterpiece comes from. This is going back to the rough ashlar and the perfect ashlar. You're asked to produce the masterpiece. If masonry is about self-improvement and becoming the human condition, become the best version of yourself, is that your masterpiece? Are you standing before me your masterpiece? If the answer is yes, well, you're a fool. If the answer is no, then you've answered your own question. And that's how I don't consider myself a master mason. I have a past master, yeah, but I really don't. Because I'm not done. This is not my masterpiece. I think it can be better than this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the lifelong, continuous journey. And I never surprise myself with the things I don't know.
No, for sure. But yeah, I mean, the work, I mean, that the fellowcraft degree is still to this day my favorite degree. It's most people's least favorite. But I think if more people learn the middle chamber, I think they would find that it is actually an incredibly insightful. I mean, literally, it's kind of the one, I feel like the fellowcraft degree is the degree that teaches us what the tools are for the work.
The fellowcraft degree provides us with the third degree. It's the step. It is the staircase into the final allegory that's going to open up some doors. But I mean, if you just look at it behind you, you've got grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. So you got the trivium and the quadrium. These are actually the 7 things, or the first and third section. The quadrium, the trivium, is the first 3, language. And the quadrium is the fourth 4. The second 4 is mathematics. And by liberal arts, what it was meant was that in ancient Rome, this was the information that a free man had to know to be a good free man. Right? This is what you had to know. This is the artis liberalis. So this is going to liberate you. But let's just take the last 4 and look at them. What is arithmetic? Arithmetic is numbers, right? These are imaginary numbers, just numbers. Geometry is numbers in space, right? That's what it is. What is music? Music is numbers in time, either in vibration or by tempo. And what is astronomy? It's numbers in time and space. So you see in that stair step, there is a natural progression, not only in the information, and I don't believe that you have to become a master in geometry. I think that this is an allegory,
Right.
but you're walking up steps, right? You're putting things together. So
Yeah.
yes, I agree. I like that degree.
For sure. I agree.
See, I also think that the third degree, most men miss the most important lesson. The most important lesson comes in the confrontation, the final confrontation. And where one man says, I am who I am, and I'm going to do what I say I do because of who I am. And the other man says, I promise not to do this, and my character is I don't do what I say I'm not going to do. Those are mirror images of themselves. They're mirror images of the same value. The depth of the goodness is met by the depth of the evil. And Jung would tell us that it is not the discarding of the evil that makes you a complete man. It's the incorporation of how bad you are into your complete temperament that makes you a complete man.
Wow.
So the mirror image showing to us 3 times, a mirror image of yourself, increasingly more aggressive in this mirror image that leads to this confrontation and ultimately to a transformation. I think that that's gorgeously powerful. And that also, by the way, scares guys when I say, hey, there were a lot of evil Nazis, but that whole thing happened because of a lot of civil servants, man. There was a lot of people who went along with that shit just because.
Yeah.
No, that's we talk a lot about this at my home lodge about that situation you're talking about in the third degree. That's like, I think that gets overlooked often, of just like a part of the degree where it's like, no, there's actually a lot that's happening there, really, like a lot deeper than just like the experience you have, like to start breaking that down. Now, we always have a lot of entered apprentices and fellow crafts at our business meetings. So our education sometimes we have to be mindful of that. But sometimes when it's just us and we get together, we start going down different rabbit holes, and we get into the psychological aspects of that. Yeah. Good meeting evil. But I like that you point out that they're just mirror images of itself.
Yeah, it's real plain. The other thing is, if I'm giving it, like when I go up on Thursday, if the group is really into it, I'll say, hey, I want to talk about this. I want all the fellow crafts apprentices to get up and leave for a moment. To excuse yourselves. Throw them out. Our business meeting used to be on the master's mason's degree. Then we went to the entered apprentice degree. We lost something there, which was the ability to talk about the entire craft, to really inculcate ourselves into the craft itself. But there's still a lot with the entered apprentice degree you could cover. You could talk about. I talk in our prayer, our closing prayer, which is in the monitor, so it's open source, but it's something like practice out of the lodge those great moral duties inculcated in it. That is the mission. There it is, man. Practice out of the lodge those great moral duties inculcated in it. I can talk 2 hours on that, on what that means, what those words mean, why they're important. In fact, I'll tell you something. If you want to look, find the word inculcate. Inculcate only recurs once in one translation of the Bible, and that's in Deuteronomy. I think it's chapter 6. And it's when Moses is talking about learning the law, learning God's law. And what he says in that thing is, he says, you have to learn God's law. You have to speak it. You have to have it in your heart. You have to walk around and talk about it, and you have to bind it to your hands. Do you recognize those?
Mm-hmm.
That's the perfect points of entrance. That's how we learn stuff, walking around, walking the talk, working with our hands, speaking it, carrying it in our heart. That's why participation is hugely important to take out of the lodge. Those moral duties inculcated in the process of inculcation is outlined in that section of Deuteronomy for outside the lodge. Yeah, and all of this, many of these things I talk about in the temple within, by the way, in depth.
Nice.
Awesome.
That's good. No, that's fantastic.
So here's a question we haven't asked in a while. We were going to ask it to everybody, and it kind of got repetitive, but we haven't had it in a while. So, what is your least favorite, or like a conspiracy theory about the craft that you just get so tired of hearing about?
Well, I've been to a stated meeting, so anybody thinks we're controlling the world hasn't been inside a stated meeting. I just find them fascinating. The one that I'll pick apart most, you've got a Templar flag there, there's the connection between Templarism and Freemasonry. I became a York Rite Mason on accident, completely on accident. It was a complete accident. But I have explored the Templar history in depth, and what the Templars brought wasn't any magic formula. They didn't bring deep secrets they found. You know what they brought? The Templars were open. The Templars were conscientious, and the Templars were disagreeable. I could identify with these guys. They brought from the particularly from the Arabs, they learned double entry bookkeeping. So they learned this new way of bookkeeping, and this new way of bookkeeping made them financial wizards in Europe. And so they had this technology that allowed them to rapidly amass a fortune. Plus they had lines of communication. They had logistics. They had an entire really system of being open to new ideas and incorporating those new ideas and creating that into power. So I guess the thing I really don't like is when I hear Masons say stupid stuff. I have to be careful. I have to be careful what I say, because I'll say things like, anytime I say this all the time, anytime in the degree we use the language Masonic tradition informs us, that means we just made this part up. What follows is the shit we made up, okay? Masonic tradition informs us. That means we made this up. That's all that means. And so when you say that to guys, they're like, well, wait a minute, man. We go all the way back to King Solomon's Temple. I want to put my head in my hand. Like, you really think that your average bricklayer in the Middle Ages was thinking any of this stuff? Again, that's good. Because the tree of Freemason, the tree of these operative Masons, this tree of this idea of building in stone. At the time that Grand Lodges formed, there's other societies that are forming. There's the Redheaded Society, the cigar smokers. There's all kinds of different societies. Masonry happens to be the one that latches onto the philosophy the hardest, I think. Which I tell you what, I am struggling too with this idea of what is a legitimate Freemason.
Yeah.
Does your pedigree have to flow from the United Grand Lodge of England? Now, your Grand Lodge is going to tell you yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. We have all kinds of things that don't flow out of the United Grand Lodge of England. Co-Masonry, Universal Co-Masonry, the Prince Hall Masons. Well, some of those do. There's some Masonic bodies and things that don't have this pedigree. I'm struggling with that right now. So,
like, in the sense that, because obviously, the vast majority of Masonry's teachings you can find online. And so essentially you could create a lodge wherever you wanted to. And the information is the information, and the application of it is a big part of what makes a Mason, or Masonic, I should say. So is your struggle with the fact of like, well, somebody could still do all the right things, but because they're not recognized by the Grand Lodge of Nebraska, or the Grand Lodge of Iowa, or whatever it is, that they're not considered legitimate, but the work that they're doing on paper is technically legitimate. Is that kind of like what you're referring to?
I think legitimacy is earned. It's not intergenerationally passed.
Okay.
And so I just don't, I struggle with some of the things that Grand Lodges do. And then we exclude other things. Part of me struggles with this. What is a Mason, right? What does that mean to be a Mason? Because we do exclude a lot of people. I'll tell you what we're not. We're not a redemption society, right? In other words, right? Because I get asked this, well, I've been to prison. Can I go to be Mason? No. I'll object. Right? I'm just going to object. We had a guy who applied for masonry in the lodge, and he had been to prison for robbery, and he was a gang member. And I just told the master, I stood in the lodge, I said, you're reading the application, I object to you receiving it. We don't need to vote. I object. I exercise, and I will exercise that publicly. Sometimes you want to exercise your ballot quietly, but publicly I did that. So I think that I struggle with that. Who's a Mason? What does that mean? My daughters can't become Masons. That bothers me. I got to tell you, my 3 daughters are better than most men I meet.
Sure.
One of them did 3 combat tours. I'm convinced she could kick your ass.
She could, for sure.
The other 2 are just, they're all 3 sharp. They're beautiful. They're good. They're good at what they do. But they can't be Masons.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have obligated one of my sons and one of my grandsons, and that's great. But my daughters can't be Masons. Don't like that.
I see what you're saying. Just out of curiosity, have they said that they wish they could?
One of my granddaughter very forcefully said, "Why should I read your book, Grandpa? I can't be one of these things."
Yeah.
And the book is dedicated to my grandchildren. It has her name in it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of kids I want to raise, by the way. I like that. It's challenging me like that. Why would I do that? I can't. You won't let me be in your club. Why don't we know what goes on inside it? And that comes down to, and I have a different thought, and this is kind of almost broke my lodge in a little bit here in San Dimas. Because I started master, I said, I'm gonna set up down a path to do 2 things. The first thing is for this lodge to grow from a center of our community to a center of the community, and we've done that. I'll be at a city council meeting, and I'll have somebody from Public Works walk up to me and go, "Hey, do you think the lodge is available on such and such date?" So the people in the city and people in the community, they say, "Is the lodge?" Not is your lodge, is the Masonic lodge, is the lodge. They've taken ownership of it as a community asset. Is it available? Right? So that's good. The second thing is that I want us to become the Masons of 100 years ago, men who have the means to build the building we live in. I mean, we're eating fruit from a tree that we didn't plant, and that bothers me too. And so those things, it's no longer your clubhouse. This is a community asset. This is a thing that's intergenerational. It's not yours. You're a keeper of it. So that bothers me a little bit.
So there's 2 things you glossed over, and I want to hit both of them, but not at the same time. You said that you made the lodge the center of the community. What did you do? How did you do that? Because that is something I think a lot of lodges would love to have to be able to say.
Yeah.
Oh, you want the secret? I'll give it to you. The secret. They gave you the tools, man. They gave you the 3 pillars: wisdom, strength, and beauty. So here's the first thing: is you have to begin inside, and your lodge has to realize that wisdom is not just learning the ritual to speak it back out. That's the first part. But the Masonic education and understanding the ritual is part of wisdom, right? To be able to use the wisdom. So you have to start inside with Masonic education and good coaching and good teaching on what we do, why we do it. The second thing is strength. You need to build pathways for participation for all men, and you need to consider the officers' line the least viable pathway. It's the worst pathway for participation. It should be the last resort. Everyone should come to, when I was master, I finally get guys, we're going to be working on the first degree. Anybody can come. You don't have to be an officer. Just show up on Monday night, sit around and watch, sit around and participate. We're going to be working on a second degree, whatever you're going to be doing. Committees, projects. Find pathways to get people engaged based on their strengths, pathways for participation based on individual strengths. So the first two are simply what? Building up the internal character of the lodge, right? The third one is the beauty of holiness. And holiness is to display the beauties of holiness. In other words, take those talents and that stuff out into the community. We created a fraternal ambassador. And so we became part of the Chamber of Commerce, created a fraternal ambassador. The fraternal ambassador goes to the mixers, goes to the coffee hours, goes to the city council. As master of the lodge, I would go to city council and report on, during public comment, report on lodge activities. Our masters still do this to that day. And so in other words, we take what we do and all the things we're involved in, and we go out into the community and we just show who we are. We march in the parade at holiday times. We just are out in the community. And then you find out that the Chamber of Commerce, a half a dozen of the men are the Masons, the Rotary clubs, I think 5 of the 30 Rotarians are Masons. You start looking around, you're going, well, geez, everybody's a Mason. And there's a Mason on all these different city committees. And then somebody says something like, the mayor says, he said to me one day, my greatest regret is I didn't follow my father in his footsteps and become a Mason. You've now, that's what I'm saying. You work internally, wisdom, strength, and beauty, and then take what you've done internally out into your community. And suddenly you'll begin to get, men will begin to apply. It grows your lodge. Use the tools we have.
Very cool. The second thing you glossed over earlier is you said you accidentally fell into the York Rite. How does one accidentally?
Okay. So,
or how did that happen?
All right. So, I took a series of jobs for the European Union, living in the Caribbean, and one of those jobs was to live in Jamaica and develop an anti-gang strategy for them. I lived there for 6 months. And so I'd go to Jamaica for 10 months, and 10 weeks, and I come home for 2. And so during one of the trips, I decided they have 16 Masonic lodges in Jamaica. I want to visit lodge. I want to visit the St. John's Lodge. So I go there, and I got all my passport. I got everything together. They turn me away. They won't let me in the lodge. They won't test me. They won't examine me. I don't care who you are. I'm in a tuxedo because I know it's a tuxedo lodge. They turn me away. They said the only way we're going to get this is if you get a letter from the Grand Lodge of Scotland through the Grand Master of the West Indies. Okay. Now remember who I am: open, disagreeable, and conscientious. Right. So yeah. I get the Grand Lodge of California to write the Grand Lodge of Scotland to write the Grand Lodge of the West Indies. And so I get a call from the Grand Master of the West Indies who says to me, okay, we're going to let you in lodge on this date. I said, but I want you to know we're going to be doing a Mark Master degree that night. So at that point, we're going to have to kick you out. And I said, all right, I understand. Thank you, most worshipful. And I hang up and I go, I have no idea what a Mark Master degree is, right? So I figured out. So I call over. Now, this is a Friday night. I get a plane leaving midnight on Saturday. I get less than 20. I get just over 24 hours. I call the York Rite in Sunland, and I get a guy who's a retired policeman. He goes, well, we're doing the degrees tomorrow, brother. If you want to pay you've got a tuxedo, want to pay the fees, well, you can get in line and we'll have you a Mark Master. And he goes, I'm the secretary. I'll write you a letter from the commandery that you're Mark Master Mason. I said, you're done. So I go there because I'm not going to be thrown out of lodge, and I get those first 5 degrees, I think it is, and I become that, and I fly to Jamaica, and I sit in lodge, and I have a wonderful time. And a couple of years goes by, and somebody says, are you interested in being a Rosicrucian? And I said, well, I might be. Well, before you can be considered, you have to complete the York Rite. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that's how I end up. It's an accident.
Okay.
I was going to say, you tripped and fell at the altar. Oh, well, I'm here now. Nice. That's right. Hey,
You guys have anything else?
I do not. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been a fun one.
Fantastic. Yes.
Absolutely agree.
I will go publicly saying I do not read Masonic books, but this is the first time that I actually really want to now, because I really like what you've said so far in this episode. And it's not that I don't read Masonic books because I think they're useless. That's just I've always been more of a direct experience person. I wanted to actually get involved with the work and do everything like that, and kind of, because I get concerned about taking somebody else's experience and then thinking that that's the one that I'm supposed to have. But I like that your book is heavily based on like understanding how to use the tools, not necessarily this is the experience you're supposed to have.
I will also, if you look at YouTube, and I think the handle's at Police Writer. Yeah, it is Police Writer, WRITER. I started a YouTube a playlist called Masonic Minute, and there's now about 100, maybe more, and they're 1-minute things on Freemasonry. And a lot of them are, I'm expounding upon things from the temple within I just didn't write. And so that'll give you a flavor of whether or not, I think that's a good experience looking at the book. I also encourage you, if you get to Amazon, click on the e-copy. I made about more than normal available publicly for you to look at and experience before you buy. And so you can you can at least read the first few chapters. And, one of the things I struggle with this book is how do I honor my obligation and yet explore things. So there'll be times in the book where for the non-Mason, I'll go, well, okay, I'm going to talk about the Book of Ruth here because it's important to our ritual, but I'm not going to tell you why. And then I'll go into the story of the Book of Ruth and why it's important and what you just get one little lesson out of it. But if you read the Book of Ruth and you realize what's going on and you realize who's involved, you're like, holy mackerel, there's a lot more here than just something with shoes.
Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned Amazon. Is where all is the book available?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble. That's it.
Okay.
If somebody wants a signed copy, I get that occasionally. I only sign hardcover, and I charge full retail plus postage. So it's about $35, I think, altogether. If somebody wanted a signed copy, occasionally somebody wants something like that. Or just get your copy and then invite me to come speak in person.
There you go.
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, pardon me.
How would somebody get a hold of you in case they wanted to do that?
So the best thing to do is my consulting website is morphed into my author website. So it's www.hightechcj.com, HITECHCJ.com, which was High Tech Criminal Justice. That's what I used to do, is consulting with the criminal justice field. So now it's an author website. You can see the books. There's all my social media, all my contact information from telephone, physical mailing address, email, everything there is a way to get a hold of me. And so, you can, everything short of smoke signals, I'll probably hear about it.
Right on.
Excellent. All right. So that brings us to our artifact of the week, which, so we had, everybody knows Micah.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a 33rd degree Mason. And he recently traveled to England and visited the Grand Lodge, and he visited the gift shop, and he bought a little Master Mason rubber ducky. And he had since left and couldn't go back and buy me one. So I got on the Grand Lodge of England's gift shop website and ordered them. By the time you do the American dollars to euro and you pay the tariffs and the shipping, they get a little pricey. But at any rate, that is our artifact of the week.
I was wondering if it was going to be the ducks. That's funny.
What the duck?
What the duck?
What the duck? Huh?
What the duck? Is it just
Wow.
It doesn't even squeak. It's just a rubber ducky.
No, I mean,
They're pretty cool.
Okay. Oh, it's master.
Yeah.
You got dueling masters here.
Like dueling banjos, but
Yeah,
duckish.
that's right.
Gone off the rails.
Yeah, we're good.
We waited all the way to the end of the show before we started blabbering.
That's good. That is an improvement.
We don't want to improve.
Rough Ashler talk right there.
Making good men better.
So, Jim, you have any shout outs?
Just for the crew at the Omaha Valley Scottish Rite. Again, it's something to behold to watch that many people come together to do those degrees and to make it work, to keep track of the time, to serve the food. It was really, again, I shout out to the Omaha Valley.
I'm going to give a shout out to all the teachers that I interact with, all the teachers just in general. But this is my 5th year teaching energy classes for OPPD. And I mean, like, not to be cliche, but like they're the real heroes, folks. Like that is a very exhausting job, and they, I get to interact with a lot of really awesome human beings in a variety of different types of school situations too, whether it's rural or public schools or private schools. And I mean, what they're doing is it's practically a miracle in my opinion, especially with the way that things are these days. So big shout out to the teachers.
So my shout out is twofold. Number one, to Brother Micah. He is moving to New Mexico, which makes my heart sad.
Yeah, good dude.
We're going to try to get him on the show before he moves. But I did have a fellow craft mason reach out, send us an email with some very, very kind words about the show.
Oh, nice.
And in talking to him, it turns out that this show is part of the reason, I'm not going to take full credit, but is part of the reason that he became interested in being a mason. So that's a win.
That is a win.
We are exponentially growing on our views and downloads, so that's good. You guys have any events coming up that you want to talk about?
Something on the 14th at Beehive.
Maybe if we get enough people.
So you don't want to
Beehive will
announce
be
it?
doing a Master Mason degree for Brother Silas. If you're available to help, just contact us here at the show. Send us a message on Facebook. Send us an email. studio357podcast@gmail.com. You got anything coming up at Mercer?
Yeah, we've got an entered apprentice degree on the 12th of May. And then the following week, we have a fellowcraft degree. I get to do the middle chamber. Haven't done it in a year. So
Jim's probably better at it than you are.
we'll see.
No. I've never been better than he is at it. So
Yeah, we have those two. And then our ladies at the table is coming up June 30th, I believe is what it is. It's the last Tuesday in June will be
All
our
right.
ladies at the table. So, yep.
Raymond, do you have anything going on out there? You're getting ready to start hitting the road, aren't you?
I am, but I tell you what we've got going on here for the first time is on July 3rd. We're going to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence here. And we've been working, the lodge has been at the forefront of the committee. We call it the 2026 committee. Not only are we going to have a 400 drone show, but we've got the 1st Division Marine Corps band, a fife and drum corps, a rock and roll band, a car show, a beer garden. They're so concerned now about how many people are going to show up. They're asking us to stop talking. But so we raised about $80,000, and we're going to have a hell of a good party July 3rd to celebrate. Can I tell you why this is important to me?
Absolutely.
Okay, so in 1976, 50 years ago, I went into the Coast Guard boot camp in late June of 1976. On July 4th, 1976, on the 200th anniversary, I was on the grinder, the parade ground at nighttime with about 800 other Coast Guard boot camp attendees. What do you call us? I don't know, recruits. And we're watching fireworks over San Francisco Bay. And some knothead begins to sing God Bless America. So 800 young men join in, booming God Bless America. And the DIs lose their shit. And they're screaming at us, that's not the government's voice, and we can't have permission to do that. So I watched the fireworks from San Francisco Bay that night from the leaning rest position, or known to you as the push-up position. And so I want to watch them this year standing on my own 2 feet. So that's why the 250th anniversary is very important to me.
Nice.
The only advice that I have for you about that celebration is be careful with Marines and beer garden. I'm just saying, as a Marine, that could spell disaster. I'm just saying.
We have the 1st Division Marine Corps band is coming. 50 people. And the last piece I'm trying to put in is I'm talking to it was the Confederate Air Force, it's now the Commemorative Air Force, and we're trying to get a B-29 and 2 fighter planes to orbit during the Marine Corps' playing of the thing. So that's the exciting thing I got going on. And it's kind of coming. We're 62 days away, and I'm excited about that.
That's pretty exciting.
It is.
That is pretty exciting.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode. And I think until next time, travel well, my brothers.
travel well.
I got to get my mouse to work.